Imagine a battlefield stretching as far as the eye can see. The horizon is a distant blur, swallowed by the sheer scale of the land scarred by war. This is not just any battlefield, it is the Eastern Front in the summer of 1943, a place where the fate of nations will be decided. The year is 1943. The Eastern Front is ablaze. The Soviet Union and Nazi Germany are locked in a titanic struggle, each side pouring men and material into a conflict of unprecedented scale and ferocity. Two massive armies are poised for a clash of unimaginable ferocity. The Red Army, bolstered by fresh reserves and new equipment, stands ready to defend their homeland. Opposing them, the Wehrmacht, determined to regain the initiative after their crushing defeat at Stalingrad. We are on the brink of the Battle of Kursk, a conflict so large, so brutal, that it will forever be etched in the annals of military history. This battle is not just about territory, it is about the very survival of nations and ideologies. The fate of the Second World War hangs in the balance. The air crackles with tension. Soldiers on both sides know that the coming days will test their courage, their endurance, and their will to fight. The ground trembles beneath the weight of thousands of tanks. These steel behemoths, symbols of industrial might and military power, are poised to unleash devastation on an unimaginable scale. The scale of the impending battle is almost beyond comprehension. Tens of thousands of soldiers, thousands of tanks, and countless aircraft are converging on a single point, ready to engage in a struggle that will determine the course of the war. Never before have so many men and machines been assembled for a single engagement. The logistics alone are staggering, with supply lines stretching back hundreds of miles, feeding the insatiable demands of modern warfare. This is a battle that will test the limits of human endurance and redefine modern warfare. The soldiers know that they are part of something much larger than themselves, a struggle that will be remembered for generations. The stakes could not be higher. For the Germans, Kursk represents a last-ditch effort to regain the initiative after their devastating defeat at Stalingrad. Their strategy is bold, aiming to encircle and destroy the Soviet forces in a massive pincer movement. A decisive victory here could turn the tide of the war in their favor. The German High Command is confident, believing that their superior tactics and technology will carry the day. For the Soviets, Kursk is a chance to break the back of the German army and secure their motherland. They have prepared extensive defensive positions, designed to absorb and then counter the German assault. The Red Army is determined, knowing that victory here could pave the way for the liberation of their homeland and the ultimate defeat of Nazi Germany. By the summer of 1943, the Eastern Front had become a cauldron of death and destruction. The once vibrant landscapes were now scarred by the relentless onslaught of war. Cities lay in ruins, and the air was thick with the smoke of countless battles. The Eastern Front was not just a battlefield, it was a testament to the sheer scale of human suffering and the devastating power of modern warfare. Hitler's dream of a swift victory in the East had long since evaporated. The initial blitzkrieg, which had brought rapid success in the early years of the war, had faltered against the vast expanse of the Soviet Union. The German High Command had underestimated the resilience and determination of the Soviet people, as well as the harshness of the Russian winter. The vast distances, brutal weather, and fierce resistance of the Soviet people had taken a heavy toll on the German war machine. German soldiers, unprepared for the severe winter, found themselves struggling to survive in the freezing temperatures. Meanwhile, Soviet civilians, driven by a fierce sense of patriotism, worked tirelessly in factories to produce the weapons and supplies needed to sustain the war effort. Despite their early successes, the Germans were now locked in a war of attrition that they could ill afford. The initial momentum had slowed, and the front lines had become a series of grueling stalemates. German soldiers, once confident of victory, now faced the grim reality of a prolonged and bloody conflict. Their resources were dwindling, and their morale was beginning to crack. Supply lines, stretched thin over vast distances, were vulnerable to constant attacks by Soviet partisans. The once formidable German war machine was now plagued by shortages of fuel, ammunition, and food. The soldiers, exhausted and demoralized, began to question the feasibility of their mission. The Soviets, on the other hand, were growing stronger by the day. Reinforced by fresh troops and new equipment, they were able to launch counteroffensives that pushed the Germans back. The Red Army, once on the brink of collapse, had regained its footing and was now a formidable force. Each victory, no matter how small, bolstered the morale of the Soviet soldiers and civilians alike. Fueled by patriotic fervor and an endless supply of manpower, they were determined to drive the invaders from their soil. Soviet propaganda played a crucial role in maintaining the fighting spirit of the people. Posters, films, and speeches celebrated the heroism of the soldiers and the resilience of the workers. The message was clear: the Soviet Union would not be defeated. The stage was set for a showdown of epic proportions. Both sides prepared for what they knew would be a decisive battle. The Germans, despite their setbacks, were determined to regain the initiative. The Soviets, emboldened by their recent successes, were ready to defend their homeland at all costs. The fate of the Eastern Front and perhaps the entire war hung in the balance. The Germans, led by the brilliant but increasingly desperate Field Marshal Erich von Manstein, planned to launch a massive pincer attack on the Kursk salient, a bulge in the Soviet lines that represented a tempting target. Manstein, known for his tactical genius, believed that a decisive victory at Kursk could turn the tide of the war in Germany's favor. However, the Soviets were well aware of the German plans and had fortified the salient with extensive defenses. Their goal was to encircle and destroy the Soviet forces stationed there and deal a crushing blow to the Red Army. The Germans amassed a formidable array of tanks, artillery, and infantry for the operation. The battle that was about to unfold would be one of the largest and most ferocious of the entire war, a true clash of ideologies and armies on a scale never before seen. The Battle of Kursk was not only a clash of ideologies and armies, but also a technological showdown between some of the most advanced weapons of war ever created. On the Soviet side stood the legendary T-34 tank, a rugged and reliable machine that had earned the respect of both friend and foe. The T-34 was not as heavily armored or as well armed as its German counterparts, but its sloped armor, wide tracks, and powerful 76.2mm gun made it a formidable opponent, especially in the hands of experienced crews. The Soviets also enjoyed a numerical advantage in tanks, with thousands of T-34s and other armored vehicles at their disposal. Facing them were the Wehrmacht's latest and most fearsome creations, the Tiger I and Panther tanks. These behemoths of steel were technological marvels, boasting thick armor, accurate high-velocity guns, and sophisticated optics. The Tiger in particular was a force to be reckoned with, capable of engaging and destroying Soviet tanks at long range. On July 5, 1943, Operation Citadel, the German offensive, commenced with a thunderous roar. The German High Command, under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, had meticulously planned this operation for months. They believed that a decisive victory here would turn the tide of the war in their favor. The chosen battleground was the Kursk salient, a bulge in the Soviet lines that presented a tempting target for the German forces. Thousands of guns unleashed a storm of steel and explosives on the Soviet defenses. The sheer volume of firepower was intended to obliterate the Soviet positions and pave the way for the advancing German troops. The ground shook as the artillery shells rained down, creating a hellish landscape of craters and debris. The Luftwaffe, eager to prove its worth after months of relative inactivity, filled the skies with fighters and bombers. Their mission was to gain air superiority and support the ground forces by targeting Soviet supply lines, communication centers, and troop concentrations. The roar of aircraft engines and the whistling of bombs added to the cacophony of battle. The German plan hinged on a swift and decisive breakthrough. The strategy was to encircle and destroy the Soviet forces within the salient. thereby eliminating a significant portion of the Red Army. German commanders, confident in their tactics and the superiority of their equipment, believed that victory was within their grasp. They hoped to recreate the lightning-fast advances that had characterized their early successes in the war. The blitzkrieg tactics, which had brought them swift victories in Poland, France, and the early stages of the Soviet campaign, were once again put to the test. Speed and surprise were their greatest assets. The initial German assaults achieved some success. Their tanks, spearheaded by the formidable Tigers and Panthers, punched holes in the Soviet lines. The German soldiers, well-trained and battle-hardened, advanced with determination, believing that victory was within their reach. Their tanks, spearheaded by the Tigers and Panthers, punched holes in the Soviet lines. These armored behemoths, with their thick armor and powerful guns, were designed to dominate the battlefield. The German tank crews, experienced and confident, pushed forward relentlessly, but the Soviets were ready. They had anticipated the German attack and had spent months preparing their defenses. The Red Army, under the command of General Zhukov, had constructed a series of formidable defensive belts consisting of minefields, anti-tank ditches, and interlocking fields of fire. These defenses were designed to slow down and bleed the German forces. They had constructed a series of formidable defensive belts consisting of minefields, anti-tank ditches, and interlocking fields of fire. These defenses were designed to slow down and bleed the German forces. The Soviets had learned from their past encounters with the blitzkrieg and were determined not to be caught off guard again. Most importantly, the Soviets had learned from their past mistakes. They had improved their tactics, equipment, and coordination. The Red Army was no longer the disorganized and poorly equipped force that had been caught off guard in the early days of the war. They were now a formidable opponent, capable of standing up to the German war machine. Their soldiers fought with a tenacity and determination that surprised the Germans. The Soviet infantry, well-trained and motivated, held their ground against the German onslaught. The fierce resistance put up by the Red Army slowed the German advance and inflicted heavy casualties. The Red Air Force, while still outnumbered, put up a spirited defense, contesting control of the skies. Soviet pilots, flying their rugged and reliable aircraft, engaged the Luftwaffe in fierce dogfights. The battle for air superiority was intense, with both sides suffering significant losses. Operation Citadel, the German gamble for a decisive victory, had become a grinding battle of attrition. The initial hopes for a swift breakthrough had faded as the battle dragged on. Both sides were locked in a brutal struggle, with neither willing to give ground. The fields of Kursk became a testament to the ferocity and determination of the soldiers who fought there.